So there's a term of art in movie making, or maybe there used to be, I don't know if anyone actually uses it anymore in this context, they used to call just business, or doing some business, or a bit of business, that pretty much just referred to stuff happening on screen for the sake of having stuff happen on screen. Like giving a character a prop to play with, or a task to do, or making a specific action need to follow a set of steps, or adding steps to a process, or making some contraption or procedure more elaborate than it necessarily needed to be, because people showed up to look at the movie and you want to give them something to look at, even if what's actually happening isn't important or moving the plot forward, or if it is important or moving the plot forward but isn't in itself altogether fully engaging, because, once upon a time when people watched a movie, it was assumed they were watching the movie, not kinda listening to the story while they folded their fucking laundry. So things like giving the supervillain a cat to pet, or a specific sequence of buttons and dials they had to throw to activate their death traps, that's a bit of business. Slapstick comedy guys like the Three Stooges being incapable of completing basic work tasks without falling all over themselves, and thus adding dozens of extra difficult steps to simple jobs, that's some business. Physical slapstick is pretty much all doing some business. Tokusatsu and anime heroes having elaborate transformation sequences triggered by catchphrases and poses, yeah, it saves on animation, recycled footage, eats up screen time, but also bit of business. Hell, when bad guys have a bunch of henchmen whose job is seemingly just hanging around in the background gesturing at things or looking busy because it reinforces the illusion there's a big functional operation that goes on outside of the main story, that's the definition of doing a bit of business. Something should always be going on and it should always look interesting, even if it doesn't make sense. In fact, especially if it doesn't make sense. Case in point, the two Dr. Phibes movies do not really make a lot of sense if you make the mistake of trying to make sense of them, and they are all about doing some business all of the time.
Excess of it. No.
You've seen lots of movies where the villain does the Phantom of the Opera play the organ routine? Okay, well this guy has a whole band. Wait, even better, his own creepy robot band. Dr. Phibes can't move his face and his voice comes out of speakers, that's already pretty unsettling. But what if he also has to plug an audio cable into his neck and walk over to plug the other end to the nearest speaker whenever he wants to talk? That's giving your star and movie a bit of business to do. Or when he puts food in the back of his neck or wherever that goes. He's gonna kill people with gimmicks? They better be gimmicky. These movies are constantly standing on a bit of business.
I suppose we'd better take him down. Why? I don't understand. Whose mind could conceive of such a bizarre way to kill?
A man called Phibes, sir. Dr. Anton Phibes.
And thus, a very strange first movie, full of business, was big business for American International Pictures, and that meant sequel.
Lifeblood then flowed back into Phibes. Great wheels and motors sprung into motion. And Dr. Phibes once more walked upon the earth.
So 1 year later in release order, but 3 years later in universe for 1972's Dr. Phibes Rises Again, Phibes' automated tomb reactivates and summons a, somehow again inexplicably rejuvenated Volnavia, now played by a new actress as Virginia North retired after the original movie to marry Sir Gordon White, aka Baron Gordon White, Lord White of Hull, the super rich guy Terrence Stamp's character in Wall Street was based on. And in a bit of retcon, or at least new information, it turns out Phibes' sleeping death was part of a bigger plan not just for evading capture, but granting himself and his late wife Victoria eternal life by seeking out the river of life from ancient Egyptian mythology.
There, my beloved, awaits the key to resurrection for you and eternal life for both of us.
Which I think was more of a metaphor even to the ancient Egyptians, but here it's an actual literal river, but whatever, it's that kind of movie. Anyway, his special crypt and most of the plan was timed to a specific alignment of the moon and planets wherein this was possible, and he just needs to go upstairs and get out a special map to the location and instructions for setting off the ritual he'd already scouted years ago, but when he goes to get it, there's been a small problem with the upkeep of the property while he was, dead for 3 years.
No. While I slept in sweet oblivion, who dared destroy my house? The safe. Could it still be here? What fiend has taken it? Only one who seeks eternal life as I do? Beiderbecke.
And so here's our gimmick for the movie. Biederbeck is another wealthy, eccentric, not exactly good guy with a secret. In this case, he's a centuries-old immortal kept young by way of a mysterious magic elixir that he's just about run out of, and he's stolen Phibes' map to the River of Life so he can use that as the new source of renewed youth for himself and his lover Diana.
You're a strange man, acclaimed as one of the most brilliant minds in the Western Hemisphere, and yet you seem obsessed with...
Yes?
the spiritual, the mythical aspect of life.
He's played by Robert Quarry, an actor who AIP was supposedly grooming to be a younger, less expensive replacement for Price as top-billed horror star around this time, so there's a bit of a meta aspect to this, and yeah, that's what we're doing. Phibes against another weird guy in a race for a treasure, which should be, interesting as riffs on a premise go. Unfortunately, just as Quarry wasn't a bad actor, but nobody is Vincent Price, there's just no out-Phibesing Dr. Phibes. I mean, how can you compete for screen time with someone whose plan to take out one henchman is, in order, robot snakes, to create a false sense of security about the real snake, to make you call for a doctor, so they can trigger a booby-trapped phone. Were there perhaps other ways to ensure that henchman picked up the phone? Sure, probably, but then they wouldn't have gotten to make and use the robot snakes, and where would the fun in that have been?
They won't steal the silverware. I've glued that to the ceiling.
Dad, I understand the silverware, but why the dog?
You understand the silverware? Cuckoo.
Plus, if Phibes didn't do things like stuff his victims into giant bottles and throw them off ships, because what else is he going to do with the giant bottle he brought on the ship with him, or insist on bringing his robot backup band and organ with him to Egypt, Scotland Yard might never figure out any of this was happening in the first place.
A man's body had been washed up. Fallen overboard? In a sense, yes, sir.
Men fall overboard all the time. That's what the locals are for. That's what I complain about in this department.
This one was inside a bottle, sir.
Do what?
He was inside a bottle. Glass it was. About 7 feet long. Corked.
Also, wait a minute. Robot band, mechanized animals, crazy guy who won't die?
And he always comes back.
Huh. That's interesting.
On arrival, I discovered the man's body surrounded by balls.
Look here, Trud.
There's some fun business in this sequel, including Phibes killing guys with a giant screw press, a controlled sandstorm, and the whole idea that Phibes went to the trouble of interior decorating an Egyptian tomb after discovering it, just so it'd be properly furnished when he got back there later.
Lights, music, Valnavia, a song of celebration. Unveil the band.
But the whole other sort of antagonist angle never really comes together with Biederbeck. He just can't match Phibes as a character, and it detracts from the more fun contrast of watching the Scotland Yard guys trip over their own feet trying to keep up with him.
Hackett. He has nothing to say, sir.
What an amazing thing. Don't do that, Trout. Sir? Fella's toenail.
It's fine, it's just not as good as the first one.
Where is she? Waiting, as we all must wait.
Play your foul games with me, Phibes. If ever a man deserves to die, it's you.
You cannot threaten the dead with death, my friend.
Phibes! 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 I beg you! Let me come with you!
It's not the end of the world.
Somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly. Birds fly over the rainbow.
Both movies were pretty successful for AIP and for Price, though, basically opening up a whole new avenue subgenre of themed proto-slasher serial killer movies that would experience a mini-boom throughout the wider 70s horror wave, even as plans for a third Phibes movie never really materialized. I think they were going to do The Bride of Dr. Phibes or something. Instead, Price would make several more movies about over-the-top killers that would get grimier and more violent as they went, with specific motifs, and you can hear more about those on Schlocktober later throughout the month.
Devil, take me. Not for some considerable time, I trust.